Welcome back, you pugnacious pummelers. I'm Lupinefiasco, this is Daily FaB Gameplay, and today we are playing Jarl Vetreidi. For anyone who's new to the channel, what we do here is review replays of games I played on the Talishar.net client days or weeks ago. After enough time has passed, that I lose my bias and can more objectively judge the quality of my games. I will talk through turn cycles as if I were taking them now, explaining my thought processes for the lines I would take and comparing them to the lines I did take. We either learn from my mistakes or reinforce good play patterns with the overall goal of tightening and optimizing our gameplay in the future to take down paper events and walk away with that shiny cardboard. If you would like to check out the deck I'm playing here or try it for yourself on Talishar, there is a FaB deck link in the video description below. While you're down there, if you haven't already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. It's the best free way to support me and to make sure that you see daily FaB gameplay in your video feed 5 days a week. I have a Blue Sky, I have a Discord, and I have a Patreon where you can find the matchup guide for this deck list. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into the action. We've got ourselves a victor game here. I won the die roll and chose to go first, and I think that was probably wrong. In my head, taking up Spring Tunic and getting an arsenal is the most important thing I can do, and while in a lot of cases that's true, or maybe playing Imposing Visage and finding Crumble to Eternity, or even just drawing and playing a Crumble. For the most part, this is a matchup where we are going to get hit and want to be hitting. And I don't know that Jarl really has the turn one high roll potential to make us want to go first in these matchups, so it's possible that I am supposed to choose to go second. Now in this case, I am going to muck around with manual targeting on Talishar. It's going to take me a minute because I haven't done it before, but the reason for doing so is I want to Coronet Peak myself so that I can pitch a So Tomorrow, discard an Autumn's Touch, and then arsenal a Pummel. And what that does is lets me get a Pummel into arsenal, but I am also going to get an Earth card into my graveyard for Decompose. And Talishar by default will always target your opponent with Coronet Peak, which makes sense because outside of turn 0 you really never want to Coronet Peak yourself, but in this case worth it. We draw into a really gas hand where we get to pitch Frozen to Death for Oaken Old, fusing Winter's Bite and Autumn's Touch, and then pitch Autumn's Touch to Pummel from Arsenal, and Arsenal Winter's Bite in its place, which means that we aren't going to block this turn. We're hoping that Victor has a pretty unimpactful turn overall, so that we don't have to take a bunch of damage to make Oaken Old Pummel happen. Outside of that, honestly, we don't really have too many lines. If we really needed to block, we could block 6 Frozen to Death and Autumn's Touch, get another Earth card into our discard, and then pitch Winter's Bite to play Oaken Old for 7. But it's much worse than sending Oaken Old for 9, Dominate, and pummeling it, which is what we do get to do instead. Victor does, in fact, have a very unimpactful turn, and we can see that we made the right call in peeking ourselves because we didn't give Victor the chance to filter, but that means that we were probably wrong to even go first in the first place. Checking Gauntlets of Iron Will here just to see how those work with the Pummel. Victor unfortunately showing that he does not respect new, playing blue Disable. Later on in this matchup we'll see a blue Macho Grande. So while this Victor list is probably not something you would see too deep into a calling, as it would have been killed by all of the news that it ran into, I am also dodging new on Talishar, so what can I say? As far as which trigger we want to resolve first, we are resolving Oaken Old, just because it is the effect that our opponent does not get to decide how they're going to address it before the effect they do get to decide how they want to address. So our best case scenario is that Oaken Old bottoms both of Victor's worst cards, and now he is forced to discard one of his better cards, Whereas if we resolve the Pummel first, Victor would get to choose between 4 cards and choose the worst one. We've got an E-Strike coming in for 8. We have a Winter's Bite in Arsenal. There are a few different ways we could use this hand. My favorite being that we block for 3 with Frozen to Death, and then we play Channel Lake Frigid, pitching our Crumble to Eternity, and attack with Sledge by pitching our Glacial Footsteps. That is a 3-card 6, putting down Channel Lake Frigid, and we take 5 in the process. The alternate line would be to block for 6 with Frozen to Death and Crumble, Tunic, pitch Glacial Footsteps to Sledge for 6, play Winter's Bite, and then Arsenal the Channel Lake Frigid. Personally, I don't like that as much. I would like to start getting my Channel Lake down earlier than later, and while I do want to be using my Tunic as regularly as I can be, I don't think it's worth using it now when we really don't have to. I want to get this Channel Lake Frigid down on the board, and I am kind of disappointed that I'm not doing that. I can Arsenal it, sure, but it would have been nice to still have a Tunic. Maybe we could have even kept that Winter's Bite, and then, especially if we didn't have an Arsenal here, then we don't need to worry about this CNC. And of course we do have to worry about the CNC. I would like to get more Earth cards into my Banish for Decompose. I do not want to play Felling here necessarily, because we have no Earth cards in our Banish. The Felling only attacks for 4, which is very unappealing. So what we can think about doing is blocking with Gauntlets, Boots, and Glacial Footsteps. Then we would probably block with Felling instead. So Felling, Gauntlets, and Trunks. We play Winter's Bite, get a card out of Victor. We pitch these 2 blues to Channel Lake Sledge. I think that is our better line. We could also block with the Armor and Footsteps to protect this Channel Lake, play Winter's Bite, get a card out of Victor, and then play the Felling, which is not super exciting, because again, a 2-card 4 is not good, even if we are forcing Victor down on cards. But at the same time, that means our first Felling is setting up our second and third Felling, so I don't hate that line. Opting to go for the Felling play here, I think is fine. It just isn't very exciting, and if you've been tracking my list, you know that I am on Summer's Fall now, so that I can be more proactive with my Decompose and not need to wait for Rootbound Carapace to let me decompose ahead of Felling. We have not drawn either Summer's Fall or Rootbound Carapace this game, so it isn't like, oh, well, if that Rootbound had been a Summer's Fall, we would have been fine. I mean, in either case, we are in not a great position right now. It does suck that this Felling came in for 4, but it does mean that later Fellings are going to be able to come in for 8. We've got a Goldmane Estate, which will create a gold, create some might, and draw Victor a new card. Depending on what Victor does with the card in hand or the Tunic, I'm looking at playing Exposed. Unfortunately, we don't have an Earth card in hand, so I can't fuse both halves of Exposed to elements, but I can play it now, fuse it with Ice. I'm assuming this card in Victor's hand is red, because if it was a blue, I would think that he would have pitched it to attack with Titan's Fist rather than looking to Arsenal it. I could be wrong. I'm assuming it's red, and if it is, then playing Exposed and fusing with Ice means that we get to destroy Snapdragon Scalers. Destroying the Snapdragon Scalers itself is not the most exciting thing we can do with Exposed. What is more exciting is that we get to start giving Victor Frostbites. So what I think I want to do with this hand is play the Exposed, pitch, fuse it with Polar Blast or Winter's Bite, destroy the Snapdragon Scalers, and then use these 2 blues, these 2 ice blues, to put down Channel Lake Frigid and attack with Sledge. I've been looking at this Channel Lake Frigid line for 3 turns now. I would like to finally do it. We are also putting down Frostbite and Channel Lake Frigid ahead of Victor having a bunch of might and 5 cards in hand. So I think this is a mistake. Yes, we are giving Victor a Frostbite and taking a card away from him with Winter's Bite, but imagine if Victor had to pay through 2 taxing effects and we had taken him from 23 down to 17 ahead of whatever he's looking to do here. Overall, I think I'm being very conservative with this Channel Lake Frigid, and I just don't know why. And here, Victor is paying Exactsies for Overpowered the Golden Sun for 14. If we had given Victor 1 more taxing effect, he can't pull this line off, and just pitches 3 cards to attack with Titan's Fist for 8. So we would have taken 6 less damage that turn. We do get to come back with Frostfang for 8. Notably, had we played that Channel Lake Frigid, we wouldn't have been able to keep it around for a second turn without just having a really inefficient turn cycle, right? With those 3 cards, we could have pitched our... we could have blocked the Titan's Fist with Glacial Footsteps like we did, then pitched Frostfang, Icequake, and Fruits to attack with Sledge for 6. Alternatively, if we are getting attacked with Titan's Fist for 8, we could have taken the 8, kept 4 cards in hand, then used our Fruits, Frostfang, Icequake, and Tunic to pay for Glacial Footsteps for 10, which would have thrown 10, and also kept Channel Lake Frigid around for a second turn, which would have been pretty good too. Either line would have been better than what I did, and I did what I did, took that line based on still having this damn Channel Lake Frigid in Arsenal. We've just really missed opportunities to play it out, and here we're drawing into more cards and more hands that really just don't do anything. Can't get this Channel Lake Frigid out of our arsenal, so now it's just stuck here. We don't have any ice to put into our pitch zone, so we can't play the Channel Lake. Unfortunately, this felling is going to prevent us from playing Pummel. There is no way to pull this off, because we just can't float an extra resource somehow. If we overpitch the felling, then we need to bottom a Pummel. And it's possible that we are supposed to do that just to get this Pummel out of my hand. This is where I'm really regretting, again, this Channel Lake Frigid still being an arsenal, because I would like to arsenal this Pummel and keep it around, not have to take an intellect penalty in order to hang on to it. I think that is what I'm supposed to do. Play felling, pitch Imposing Visage, bottom Rootbound Carapace to the Felling of the Crown. Here we're seeing where I am. This might have even been the game that convinced me to try Summer's Fall instead of Rootbound Carapace. If this Rootbound was Summer's Fall, I could have played it, floated a resource, then pitched Felling to Pummel. I get to come in for 10 with a Pummel effect and take one of these mites off of Victor's side of the board. So Victor discards, and I get another extra point of value out of the Summer's Fall Decompose effect. We draw into a hand that fortunately does start to work with Channel Lake Frigid. Unfortunately, we're going to take a lot of damage to pay for that. So at this point, I am looking at blocking with Channel Mount Ice and taking 6, probably dealing with Victor attacking for 4 with Titan's Fist and arsenaling a card, and then I get to play Channel Lake Frigid, Sledge, Arsenal, Pummel, which seems like a fine line. Take 10 to send 6 with the Channel Lake effect. Really, we are starting to fall behind here quite a bit. Command and Conquer coming in for 6. This I do want to block. This is going to be Gauntlets, Channel Mount, and Fruits of the Forest. And then play Channel Lake Frigid, pitch Winter's Bite, Arsenal, Pummel. Playing with a few different blocking combinations here. The important thing is that we are looking to play this Channel Lake Frigid specifically so that we can free up our arsenal to put Pummel in there. I don't like this block. I would like to keep Coronet Peak for as long as I can. We really just didn't need to do that. We were going to keep 2 cards in hand anyway. One of them was going to be Pummel, so this is just poor use of equipment. We could have 2 block equipment instead of 1 block equipment. We would also be able to start filtering cards out of hand to the Coronet Peak effect, It doesn't particularly matter here. Here, what I want to do is sink below whatever Victor does. In this case, Blue Chokeslam is a great target for sink below. I want to then sledge and pummel it, all from hand, holding onto the pummel in my arsenal, and I get to keep Channel Lake Frigid around. Here I do sink, and I'm going to choose to sink the pummel, desperately looking for another attack. Winter's Bite Red is a great card to find instead, because I do get to give Victor a Frostbite, but I would much rather come in for 10 with no Frostbite and Channel Lake Frigid up than 6 with Frostbite and Channel Lake Frigid up, because I'm not going to pummel this sledge, right? I want to save the pummel. We're digging through our deck, we're finding more attacks. I want to save the pummel. So the Winter's Bite here just, I don't know, it doesn't seem very good. It doesn't seem as valuable as pummeling and trying to put our opponent closer to death. Right, we're floating these 2 resources. We aren't going to use them for anything. Overall, this just seems like a poor use of cards and a poor use of resources. Notably, if we had Coronet Peak here, we would not get to use it for anything. It would just be sitting on the board, but as much as I said, I want to keep Peak around so that I have a pitch outlet, I have a way to disrupt my opponent, this is not an example of being able to do that. The hand that we draw into is absolutely terrible. This is really poor variance on our part, not drawing any attacks for 2 turns in a row. Not even a blue attack, right? If we had a Fruits of the Forest in this hand, I'm a little more excited about it. We also don't get to keep our Channel Lake Frigid around. Our opponent doesn't have armor that we could destroy with a half-fused exposed to the elements. So I think this is a fine way to get pummel out of our arsenal. What I might have wanted to do with this hand instead is pitch 2 blues to sledge, play the Remembrance, Arsenal Staunch Response. Staunch being in Arsenal is good anyway. Maybe we also play Polar Blast instead. Potentially get a card out of Victor to stop the Dominate and give Victor a Frostbite, and that seems pretty good. So that probably is what I'm supposed to do with that hand. Pitch yellow to play Polar Blast, pitch blue to attack with Sledge, and then use a Tunic to play Pummel and Arsenal Staunch Response instead, so we come in for 10, and Victor has a Frostbite here. We'll see what Victor's turn looks like. The Frostbite would have been relevant. We're expecting to get pummeled here, but it means that Victor would have needed to use the Tunic to pay for it, rather than getting to keep the Tunic resource. Here, we're expecting pummel. We've got 2 Staunch Responses, a Tunic and a blue, so we are going to get to use a blue and a Tunic to block 14, and then pitch blue, play Command and Conquer. Victor has an arsenal that we are going to get to threaten. So overall, not a terrible turn cycle. It's just, we're kind of struggling to make anything happen here, and part of that is our low life total is based on some strategic misplays and not getting Channel Lake Frigid value as early as we could that really would have impacted Victor's turns. But outside of that, just not drawing an attack to pummel for 2 turns in a row is really unfortunate for us. That is just bad variance. Getting cards out of Victor doesn't really feel that good when we know that we are just playing from behind here. Got a Chokeslam coming in for 8. As far as I know, this affects Felling of the Crown, so I'm going to need to block 5 here. That sounds good to me, and then we will just Felling for 8. Our Decompose is finally online, and we have cards in our Banish that are going to make this Felling 8 power. So Victor bottoms a card. We are expecting that we're going to get to push some damage over blocks. Victor either blocks 6 from hand, keeps a card to play the Arsenal, or just blocks 9 and we get full tempo. So either way, maybe we're kind of clawing our way back into this game, but from where we were early, which was super far ahead after the Pummel Oaken Old, we have just really slowed down, and part of that is mismanagement of resources. Drawing into 4 reds here is really unfortunate. Blocking with Glacial Footsteps seems fine. Worst case, our Tunic is up, so we can Winter's Bite Command and Conquer. Now we can't. We're going to have to discard to Pummel, which is just going to be Oaken Old. Victor has the 2 floating resources available. I'm going to be able to use the gold to either draw an Arsenal or swing with Titan's Fist, which we of course need to block. We can do so with Command and Conquer, and then play the Winter's Bite and not feel so terrible about that. But this Titan's Fist for 4 does feel really bad. I would have liked to have this CNC for our Arsenal. And then Winter's Bite gives Victor a Frostbite and gives us and takes a card out of his hand. And so we just need to hope that Victor stumbles. Golden Sun coming in for 10 overpower is not the stumble we're looking for. We do get to block it though by using Imposing Visage, Sink Below, and Rootbound Carapace. We have our Spring Tunic up, so we can use So Tomorrow and Tunic resource to attack with Sledge for 6, which at least gets 1 card out of Victor's hand, if not 2. Looking at our graveyard here just to see what our decompose situation is. The thing is, we don't need to decompose if we block with the 3 block instead. We use Imposing and Rootbound as 2 3 blocks, and then Sink as a 4 block to cover up this 10 in its entirety. But definitely not terrible. Again, seeing more blues that really would cause this Victor to just auto lose to new. Sledge for 6, looking to take at least 1 card. Test of Strength from Victor. Really unfortunate for us. Victor wins the Clash. Victor is just built for it. As much as we are both Guardians, the fact that Victor can build his deck for clashing and we are filling our deck with defense reactions and non-attack actions means that we are likely to lose a lot of these clashes. It is just unfortunate that we've lost so many clashes. We can cover the E-Strike with our 2 pieces of armor and Frozen to Death, then use a Decomposed Rootbound Carapace to block Titan's Fist for 4, and we get to send Oaken Old for 7. Unfortunately, we cannot keep Oaken Old frozen and crumble. Victor did draw into a hand that lets him convert into multiple chain links. If this was just, Pitch Blue, not CNC, but maybe Choke Slam for 6, then we could cover this with armor and Rootbound and get to send Fused Oaken Old, but as it is, we are just going to be sending 7. We'll get 2 cards out of Victor so that he doesn't die, and we're hoping to maybe scrape together some kind of decompose or some kind of large attack later on. But Victor getting more clash value is just going to mean that we don't get to come back from this game. Of course, Victor does have the gold, so even if Victor loses a clash, there is no guarantee that he doesn't just fix it to win. But here we are just going to die. Victor's got 2 resources floating to pay for gold and can just keep pitching blues to keep drawing new cards and generate an extra resource while he looks for some kind of attack that can kill us. His red Chokeslam is going to be the attack. We can only block 7 to the 8, and so we are just going to die. So I do want to chalk some of this up to bad variance. Certainly while we had a pummel in Arsenal and just could not find an attack that we could pummel and get the discard effect was really bad news for us. Victor won every single clash, which the deck is built to do, but statistically we have attacks in our deck that could compete with Victor's clashes and we just never flipped one at the right time. But really, a lot of this loss came down to that Channeling Frigid just rotting in our arsenal for way too long. Me being unwilling to pitch 2 blues to Channeling Sledge was a huge mistake. Definitely could have stopped that 14 overpowered Golden Sun turn, and then not having that Channeling in Arsenal would have let us Arsenal the pummel, not IP ourselves on the Felling of the Crown turn, and maybe this game goes differently. Maybe we are able to better utilize our resources so that Victor doesn't have time to win as many clashes, or the clashes he does win aren't as impactful. And of course, as much as I've built this deck to not compete with new, so has our opponent, it would seem. But that's the game. I did feel like I learned quite a bit from this, specifically that Rootbound Carapace is not where I want to be. For Decompose, I want to be doing it more proactively, which is why I'm playing Summer's Fall now. But overall, I am kind of dissatisfied with Decompose recently. Drawing Fellings before Summer's Fall, or drawing Fellings before we have enough Earth cards in discard to Decompose, makes it the worst card in our deck by a significant margin. So maybe Ice Aggro is the way to go. We'll see. I'll experiment. But I hope you enjoyed this game. I hope you learned something. If so, be sure to pummel that like button. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback. If you haven't already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. It's free. It helps me out a lot. I have a Blue Sky, a Discord, a Patreon. Those links are in the video description below. And until the next time I see you on Daily FaB Gameplay, stay frosty.